So last week I made a video that made everyone really mad. What's new, right? I went online and I said an opinion, and that is just how you get yourself in trouble. I said the Switch 2 is a great deal. Now that's not what the topic of this video today is. This topic was inspired, however, by a comment from that video talking about how the Switch 2 was evil because Nintendo has exclusive games and how exclusive games are bad and awful and the industry is ruined and worse for it. And I also saw a poll this past week on SpawnWave's channel asking his community, and by the way, go subscribe to SpawnWave if you have not yet. He is a phenomenal news channel for video games. But he said, what drives you most to buy a specific game system? I like the controller, the exclusive games, achievements or trophies, or if their digital library is already there, and 79% of the people, and over 32,000 people voted, said exclusive games was what drove them to buy a console. And on top of this, and all of this discourse within the community I've seen a lot lately, Nintendo and Sony and Xbox are going through more change than ever in terms of what the industry is going to look like moving forward, particularly with Sony. Sony is making so many big changes that I don't see a lot of people talking about, and they are pretty concerning changes to me personally, for someone with the opinion that I hold, and a lot of people are enjoying what they're doing, and yet I just don't see a lot of discussion about it. But the thing I am hinting at here is that Sony is not just releasing games on their PlayStations anymore. A lot of their games have moved over to the PC and that landscape on computers, and they have been advertising the heck out of this and selling so many of their first-party games on PC. And they have everything on there. Helldivers, God of War, Spider-Man, Horizon, pretty much everything. Ratchet & Clank, Returnals, like all of these franchises are on the PC. And you know what? I understand that because PC and console games are completely different. That experience is just totally different. People buy consoles and then people buy PCs, and there isn't a ton of overlap unless there are like super duper hardcore gamers out there that really like to buy both. But typically the PC market is completely different than the console market, and those just don't go together. Like no one really thinks about those together. So even though that comment had really perked my interest on this topic and that SpawnWave poll, and remembering that Sony has put pretty much every single one of their first-party games on PC as well as their PlayStation 5, I was just going to say, well, you know what? No, I'm good. I'm not going to make a video about this, but then this piece of news dropped, and I had to make a video. I had to, because this changes things. What am I referring to? Well, one of PlayStation's most successful games in 2024 that came out of nowhere, Helldivers 2, is now being put on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and S. You can play a Sony first-party game on an Xbox console. There is something in the air right now about multi-platform releases, about consoles being broken, all these barriers being broken in terms of which studios put what games on what platform. That divide that was once a huge, huge deal to every studio, to every company, is now becoming thinner and thinner and closer together, to the point where Sony put a first-party game on Xbox. To really put this in perspective for you, this is similar to as if Nintendo decided that Donkey Kong Bonanza was going to be put on PlayStations. Like, that is just, it's absurd. It's never going to happen, you would think. It's just something that has never happened up until this point, and I think there is good reason for that. But now we are seeing more and more common arguments for people saying, you know what? We don't need console exclusive anymore. All that does is hurt the industry. So why do people think that? Why do I disagree with it? And am I going to give this a fair shot? Yes, I am going to argue this from a logical standpoint here. So please listen to what I say before you comment. First, let's just walk through the general idea, the pros and cons of both sides of this argument. And I will be completely fair with y'all. I will start with reasons that this could be amazing for the industry. Well, number one, it could be better for the consumer to not have to buy every single console to get all of the console exclusives. If you wanted to play Halo, you'd have to get an Xbox. If you wanted to play Last of Us, you'd have to get a PlayStation. If you wanted to play Mario, Zelda, any first-party game from Nintendo or any of these other companies, you'd have to get whatever console Nintendo was putting out at the time. The Switch, Switch 2, Wii U, Wii, whatever they're doing, it's always different names. Whatever they're going to do, you would have to buy it to play whatever game that company was producing. Now, if this new era, it comes to pass into where everyone puts all of their games on a singular platform, that's all you have to do. And you can buy any of the platforms. You can buy all of these. You can buy all 3 or just one and have access to every single one of these games. Does that sound enticing? It absolutely does. I would love to be able to pick up an Xbox or a PlayStation or whatever and be able to play every single game I want to play on that machine. That would be amazing. In theory, I think. And here's where the argument already starts to fall apart, because that is the consensus for the main reason why people would want all of these games to be put on a singular platform. It's better for the customer, right? We only have to buy one console to play all of our games. It's easier. It's better. It's not greedy. It's not these companies looking to just get as much as they can out of us. It's them saying, you know what? We're going to put it all on one for you. Well, I start to disagree with you there. In this utopian world, for the people who think that console exclusives are evil, I just really struggle to see the logistics of this. I really struggle to see how this would all work, because what we're assuming here is that a singular company has a monopoly on the industry. Because you can say all you want all day long, oh, the 3 companies would just continue to develop games and then share them across the platforms. That's just not going to work. That's not feasible for these companies to do that, because they're going to want to put those games on their own platforms. And if you're saying that they would desire to do that for some reason and then they just do it anyways, well, then they have to make sure they optimize the game for every single console on the market. We're talking Steam Deck, we're talking Switch, Switch 2, Xbox Series S and X, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, every console that currently exists. You're going to have to make sure it works for that, and that is such a huge risk to take, especially for new IPs, right? What if you want to create something completely different, something completely new? Well, you have to go through all of this development process and spend a ton of money fixing the bugs and making sure it is totally polished for every unique gamer on every unique platform. Well, then someone might come right back at me and say, in my perfect world, Ray, I want every single developer from every single company to come under one umbrella to develop for a single console, and everyone buys that, and that's what I want. If everyone is in the same company and everyone is developing for the same console, there's no competition. There's no reason to want to get better. There's no motivation. There's no nothing. You're just developing for a singular platform, and if that company goes down, you all go down. There's just no sense to it. And even if you want to not take it down that extreme path like I think some people would, and you just want to be basic and say, you know what? Okay, cool. I just want all the platforms that we have now to have every game on all those platforms. Well, then how does the schedule release work? Do they release day and date every single console? Well, then they have to make sure that every console has it playable and that it's able to do that. But what if certain studios are developing certain games and they want it to come out on a certain time? Well, these other studios are going to have to try to match that, right? Because if everyone's playing nice together, there's just going to have to be one big schedule for everyone across the world from all these different companies. No, I just don't think so. I don't think that is wise. And I think, and maybe this is a little bit of capitalism here showing, but I think the competition means something. People going out and buying Switches, buying Switch 2s, buying Nintendo products, that means something more. People buy those consoles because they love Nintendo games. And Nintendo would not exist. PlayStation would not exist without the competition, without other people inspiring other people from other places to go and make their own things. That's how PlayStation even got its start. They were going to develop games with Nintendo initially, and they decided, you know what, we're going to split off. We're going to make our own. We're going to make a PlayStation, and we're going to use discs, and Nintendo can continue to use cartridges with their N64. And that is how the PlayStation came to be. And if at some point Nintendo decides they just aren't good at making games anymore, or the developers just aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, or the consoles all fall off, if something goes wrong and Nintendo comes out of the industry, someone else is going to take inspiration from them and take over. But it doesn't seem to me like that is very possible at this point, just because of all the success of the Switch and of the Switch 2. But what I'm trying to say here is that it matters. Console exclusives matter, and they're healthy for the industry. It's the reason that no one wants to buy an Xbox, because Xbox doesn't have any good games. And if they do have good games, it's from other companies. So if you want those games, then why aren't you just buying that company's console? It makes no sense to me on any level. And the only thing I can truly say is that Nintendo is king of exclusives. That is why I love Nintendo, because their games are amazing. Sony has amazing first-party games as well, a very different kind of amazing and a very different kind of genre. They focus a lot more on graphical fidelity and also shooter games and just games that evolve on that formula. Horizon is technically a shooter game, but with a bow and arrow set in a futuristic yet past-like environment. It's a fun game. They have Spider-Man, which is from Marvel, of course. They have Last of Us, which is a narrative-driven experience, and all of these different games have amazing visuals. PlayStation and Sony bring a lot to the table, but so does Nintendo. They focus much more on gameplay over narrative, and the player experience being the absolute best it can be over the graphics being overly impressive. A perfect example of this is Splatoon. Splatoon isn't in 4K. It's not running at these crazy speeds. It doesn't have ray tracing. It doesn't have all of these technical feats, but it is very fun and it's very unique and it's something that only Nintendo could create and something that other companies tried to replicate. Foam Stars was a game that was really trying to push for that Splatoon crowd, but it never really caught on, right? It never took off, but what it did was inspire people. It inspired developers across the industry to make a successful game for their company and to try to replicate that similar formula. And Nintendo continues to impact the industry at an insane rate because of their console exclusives. When Breath of the Wild released, Skyrim was the pinnacle of the open world formula, and there were a ton of other developers out there trying to make open world experiences that were engaging and that were really fun, and one that I really think of was Shadow of the Colossus. That game was fascinating because you would go with these weird controls and you would try to find these huge creatures and take them down, but at the same time, right, there was nothing else to do in the world other than just traveling from point A to point B, and that was very boring, and there were a lot of open world games like that just didn't have a lot to do. So here comes Breath of the Wild, right? And it innovates. It totally redefines what the open world genre could even look like. And what happened for the next preceding 8 years? Everyone tried to copy it. Everyone tried to make games like Breath of the Wild and later on Tears of the Kingdom to really no avail, but it inspired so many developers and added so many different features and quality of life installments to their own games that ended up being really, really good. And also, right, I'm a huge Nintendo fan. I buy Nintendo consoles because I want to play Nintendo games. Shocker, right? I think people really have to have that same experience with Sony games or Xbox games. They buy those platforms because they know what to expect from them. They know what kind of games to get. They know what kind of third-party offers they're going to have. They just know everything about that console going into it. And with the Switch 2, I think that bridge has been divided even more without having to sacrifice those console exclusives. Now, third parties have been a big problem with the Switch 2 so far in terms of graphical fidelity, all of these games not running the best that they could, but I think it is very interesting to see all of these games try to be there. Cyberpunk is amazing. We have Final Fantasy VII Remake that looks amazing. Elden Ring, we're getting very, very mixed reports. People are saying it runs horribly, but then we get a bunch of videos on Twitter that don't look too awful in my opinion, and they're very low res, so we can't see how it actually runs yet, but it doesn't look too bad. Then we've got the game keycard situation. I could really make a whole video about the third-party mess on the Switch 2, but it's starting to bridge that gap even more to where developers are saying, yeah, I want to develop my game for Nintendo too, to where everyone can also play on the Switch 2. And I think that's amazing. I think it's awesome when third parties or indies and all of these different platforms that don't have any specific ties to a company or a console decide to develop for every single platform. It's really awesome. I love that. But what I don't love is the idea of single player experiences made from the ground up, or even multiplayer experiences from these developers that are only supposed to be making it for these consoles, all of a sudden deciding it's going to be on every platform. I just don't appreciate that mindset because I think it takes away from the competition of the industry. I think it makes it to where everyone is monopolized, right? If everyone has everything, then no one has anything, because if it all goes on a singular platform, then why would you buy any of the others? You're just going to buy the one that you think is best, and eventually everyone else is going to die out. You're going to go to that one platform, and that company is going to succeed over everyone else, and it's just going to become a monopoly. Imagine a company like EA all of a sudden was able to get all of these companies under their wing, and they were able to just make the decisions for every single game developer. That would be a disaster. It would be awful. All these other companies, they do layoffs, mass layoffs, and it's horrible. People are losing their jobs left and right, and they're qualified, and that's the worst part because people are making record profits and they're cutting every single employer, and it's horrible. Nintendo doesn't do that, and that's why I love Nintendo so much. They have been increasing in their employers. They have been expanding in everything, developing new buildings, making new spots for people to be creative and pass on knowledge from the older generation to the younger generation and move things forward in a healthy way, keeping everything in-house and not kicking people to the curb just because a game didn't make $1 billion. That is something I think other companies could learn from. But what I think Nintendo could learn from is other companies doing things much better. I think Xbox is much more accessible with their gamers. They offer so many more options, and they put their dang games on sale. I swear to you, Xenoblade would sell so much better. Metroid would sell so much better if you just gave us a discount every once in a while. Not even like a ton, but like 3, 4, 5 times a year. You gotta give us something. You can't just keep a game at $60 full dollars, $70 full dollars for an entire console generation and expect anything to happen with that game. There are problems with all of these companies across all of these industries, but I think eventually one of these problems is going to get too big for the consumer, and the consumer is going to move to a different platform. And when they do, that is when the company will know they need to change course. They need to be better. I think of people like Sakurai, right? He, on his YouTube channel, talks about all of these other games across all the industry, not just Nintendo. He holds an incredible amount of respect for Nintendo, as he should, but he also plays these other games and takes inspiration from them and puts those in his own games. He plays all games and is better for it, and that would never happen if there weren't console exclusives, pushing these consoles to be sold, pushing people to buy them, and pushing the developers to work even harder to make better experiences for the player. All things that would never happen without exclusive games. So that is my argument. That is why I believe that exclusive games need to stay, need to stick around. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Maybe I am overlooking something, and I will admit that if I am wrong, if you are able to present a better argument. Maybe I'll even make a follow-up video. I would love to be wrong if I am. You know, I'm not going to just sit on my opinion just because. I'm willing to change my mind. So make sure you like and subscribe to today's video if you enjoyed. Click that notification bell so you know exactly when I release all of my videos, and consider joining my membership program to make sure you get early access to all my videos and just help support the channel at large. It really, really does help, and the support means a ton to me. Make sure you click on the left side of your screen to see why I don't think we're getting another Smash Bros. Game until 2028, and click on the right side of your screen to see why I believe the Nintendo Switch 2 is an amazing deal. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. You make sure you have yourself a phenomenal day. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you all in the next video.